So finally, the unexpected talks between US and Iran has begun. Now, these are informal talks which are going on currently. While I'm recording this video, the talks are underway. But still, it is a very positive move after the US pullback from the Iran nuclear deal in the year 2018.
I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. The fact is, this was a horrible one-sided deal that should have never, ever been made. It didn't bring calm, it didn't bring peace, and it never will.
Now again, when Donald Trump has become the president of US, again it is for us to see that what this particular agreement will be amongst US and Iran. And in this, a very important party is Israel. So what this issue is all about, what is the negotiation going around, what is Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and what is this whole deal of Iran being a nuclear power and Iran trying to build nuclear capabilities, we'll be trying to understand in this particular session. Hello, my name is Preetpal Singh and you're watching Perspective. Now let's get things very straight. The world after the World War II has been divided into two halves. One is the nuclear haves and another is nuclear have-nots. Now, according to the Non-Proliferation Treaty (NPT), which India is not a signatory to, Non-Proliferation Treaty says that except the P5 nations, that is US, UK, France, Russia and China, other than these countries, no other country in the world should possess nuclear weapons. Now, India says that it divides the world into nuclear haves and have-nots. And definitely we did not support it, and we had a nuclear test in our country, and definitely now India is a nuclear power. But India is not a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. But the problem for Iran is that Iran was a signatory to the NPT. But by the year 2000, early 2000s, there were speculations in the entire world that Iran has been trying to develop nuclear weapons. Now for that you have to understand the geopolitical construct. See, Iran and Israel, they're anti each other. They're not very well with each other. Iran supports Palestine and denies the existence of Israel altogether. And Iran also supports Hamas in Gaza Strip as well, which is why Iran and Israel, they don't go along really well. And definitely US, who's a world superpower, would not want any other country which is not serving well with Israel to have a nuclear capability, especially nuclear arms capability. But Iran, contrary to what Non-Proliferation Treaty says, tried developing nuclear weapons by the year early 2000s, which is why the whole world took a step back and then eventually tried to negotiate with Iran to tell Iran to stop working on nuclear weapons and to reduce the facilities, to destroy the facilities of nuclear sites in Iran. Now, this is not as simple as it looks. Negotiations amongst these countries had several rounds in place and several hiccups, several ups and downs could be seen. But for that, we have to understand what happened in the year 2002. Now, there's an international nuclear watchdog known as International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. Now, according to that watchdog, Iran, as early as 2002, started building these nuclear capabilities in the country, which definitely broke the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And eventually, several sanctions for the whole decade of 2000s, several economic sanctions were imposed on Iran by US, UK, and the permanent five of the world. So Iran's economy basically crippled. Iran was not able to get out of it. Iran's economy went into a recession. Prices were extremely high. Inflations were skyrocketing. Unemployment levels were extremely high. Currency got depreciated to next levels. And all these things were happening in Iran while the world imposed sanction on Iran because of these nuclear weapons. Not the entire world, but US, UK mainly. And while this was happening, Iran wanted to negotiate with the countries, which is why this negotiation started in the year 2013 and prolonged the negotiations from 2013 to 2015 between Iran and P5+1, that is permanent 5 countries plus 1, which is your US, UK, France, Russia and China. Alongside that plus 1, that is Germany. All these countries and Iran, in 2015, they concluded and brokered a nuclear deal. And that 2015 Iran nuclear deal is formally known as Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. Now, according to this Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, Iran will considerably demolish and reduce its nuclear capabilities and would be using nuclear capabilities to a very little extent for civilian purposes, for research purposes. And on the other hand, what US will do, or what other countries will do, they will slowly lift the economic sanctions on Iran and let Iran sell oil to the whole world. But then eventually, Donald Trump becomes the US president. And in the year 2018, Donald Trump pulls back and pulls out of this Iran nuclear deal. Now, if US, the main party, pulls out, there is no point of joint comprehensive plan of action. And definitely the other countries can't do much if US pulls out automatically. Which is why this pullout of US from this Iran nuclear deal is considered as a watershed moment in the global geopolitics at that point of time. And they took the headlines of the entire world at that point of time because it was really a very big issue. And there were several reasons because of which Donald Trump pulled back. We'll discuss about that reasons later. But definitely what will happen now, Iran would be placed again under sanctions. And sanctions would be reinstated. And the reason which was given was that Iran failed to meet its commitments. Now, to understand it specifically and technically, nuclear weapons requires uranium. And that uranium needs to be enriched, which is not a very easy task. And this uranium needs to be enriched up to 90% to create a formidable nuclear weapon. But under this JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, Iran was only allowed to possess around 300 kgs of uranium, and that too should be having around 3.67% purity, not 90%. And this 3.67% was enough for civilian nuclear purposes and research purposes for Iran as well. But the contradiction is that by March of 2025, this year itself, IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, has said that Iran is having around 275 kilograms of uranium, which it has enriched up to 60% purity, which is humongous. And this is enough theoretically to make half a dozen nuclear weapons if Iran is able to enrich the uranium to a greater extent, which is again a worrisome situation for especially Israel and for US as well. Now, several US officials have said that in a duration of 1 week, Iran can convert these capabilities into a nuclear weapon in as less time period as a week, which is again a worrisome situation. But the background says that when this JCPOA was launched, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, it was there to exist for 15 long years. And after that, the restrictions would expire. But when Donald Trump became president, and eventually in the year 2018, Donald Trump pulled out of that JCPOA. The question is why? And what was the reason? Now, he consistently, during his presidential campaign as well, kept on saying that this Iran nuclear deal is a bad deal.
That deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it.
Where US negotiated badly. And one thing which was very clear was that it did not address the Iran's ballistic missile program, which is again very worrisome for the US and other nations as well. So it did not address the ballistic missile program. And also amongst other things, it was a temporary deal. And as a part of Trump's negotiation tactic, which involves maximum pressure going to extremes, he says that I will pull back from the deal and I would want Iran to again broker a deal, again make a deal with the US, which is in favor to the US as a country. And this decision was partly influenced by American allies, especially Israel, which was against the deal and says that Iran should be given no nuclear weapons at all. And Iran should be allowed to keep zero nuclear authority, zero nuclear weapons, and there should be no facility in Iran vis-a-vis nuclear power. And as you would guess, what would happen when US abandoned the deal? Iran again went back to what it was pre-2015. So till 97% of what Iran had pre-2015, Iran again regained back. And the latest data of 2025 by IAEA, I already have shared with you. Now, one more question which might come to your mind in relation to India here is that what was the significance of this Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action for India? So India is having significant interests in Iran. With our bad relations with Pakistan, definitely our way to this particular region is definitely Iran. And we have definitely Chabahar port and Bandar Abbas port, which definitely we are not able to access because of these US sanctions. Sometimes definitely the ongoing progress is there, but most of the times it's US sanctions which India is worried of. And alongside that, India's interest in international north-south transit corridor, which also includes Iran, by the way, that also makes Iran a very significant partner for India's trade in this particular region. Which is why if US imposes multiple sanctions on Iran, India first of all won't be able to buy cheap oil from Iran. And second of all, this connectivity of India into these oceanic regions and trade routes would also get a bit devastated or would also get a bit negatively impacted. So in relation to energy security, in relation to transit security and trade related security as well, India is having considerable stake in this particular region and also considerable stake in Iran being a nuclear power or not. And US imposing a action against Iran or US imposing a sanction against Iran or not. See, this current announcement of resuming the talks between US and Iran has taken Israel to a shock. So Israel was not aware of these discussions. But if a certain deal with Iran is reached, Israel won't be happy, as most of the experts say, because Israel actually wants complete destruction of Iran's nuclear program. Now, Trump has definitely previously warned that if Iran doesn't make a deal, there would be bombing, which is why there is a considerable pressure on Iran to come up with a deal as well. And Iran's military general, was definitely bombed and killed by US, Qasem Soleimani. But still, Iran announced that they won't be reducing their uranium enrichment and nuclear program in the country. They won't be reducing it. So which is why Israel is worried in this case a lot. Now, Iran would hope a deal to limit its nuclear program, not to dismantle it. But the interest of Israel would be not to limit, but to dismantle the whole nuclear program of Iran altogether, which practically speaking, it is next to impossible, or it's very, very difficult. But if US is able to broker a deal with Iran, according to Iranian officials, what they would want is a fair deal. And what they would want, a deal to be equal, which is why the Iranian foreign minister said that our intention is to reach a fair and honorable agreement from an equal position. These words are very carefully arranged, and which is why Iran also won't be backing down if you see this whole scenario. But then the question might arise that would US and Israel really bomb Iran? The answer to it is usually no. Because when big powers fight, usually they fight at the back and on diplomatic fronts. And on the military front, definitely all the countries, 3 countries, they know that nuclear power to an extent is available to Iran. It's definitely there with US. Israel, we can't say. But still, if these countries fight amongst each other, if there is a war, it would be a devastating war. So it would be foolish for a country to go for outright bombing in each of the nation formally. Informally, proxy wars, they are being consistently going on in the Middle East region, that's for sure. But an outright war between nations, 2 nations together, that I think so, right now, it's not usually predictable. Also, after Donald Trump's announcement of talking to Iran, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he has said that the only deal which will be acceptable would involve Iran agreeing to dismantle the whole nuclear program of its. And he says that we go in, we blow the facilities and dismantle all the equipments under American supervision and execution. That is what Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's Prime Minister, has to say. Now, if you look at it from Iran's angle, Iran currently is in a watershed moment. There is a generational shift which is seen in Iran, economic urgency which is seen in Iran, and also evolving geopolitical dynamics which are evolving and changing each passing day. See, the average Iranian right now is 32 years old. And they have not experienced what the older Iranian leaders have experienced. That is the 1979 revolution, or the Iran-Iraq war, or the 1989 leadership succession. The current generation is not privy to these things, which is why the current generation wants food. The current generation wants jobs. The current generation in Iran wants technology, wants liberation, wants to be in trade, wants to do business, wants to earn money. Which is why Iran right now, it's at a very tricky slope. Now, youth-led protests in Iran, they have been managed by regime, some through coercion and some through limited reforms in Iran. But still, the urgency of reformation in Iran as a country, it's urgent and it's boiling. So this newer generation, it is less ideologically bound to the idea of Iran. And they are more towards economic opportunity and social change. And this resistance economy of Iran, which was built after the year 2018, it is soon going to show not a very great result for the young people of Iran, which is why there is a need for urgent reforms. And urgent reforms won't be possible. And Iran won't be able to recover fully, but there is no deal which is to be signed with the US. Which means that a deal with the US is the need of the hour for Iran also, and for US and Israel and other P5 nations as well. So it is a functionality, and it functions well for both the parties in hand. For Iran, it would give the country an opportunity to grow back, to reduce the sanctions and to again trade with the world and just empower their depreciating currency. For US and other P5 nations, it would be a deal for brokering peace and stability in the region. So for US, what US wants is peace and stability and its position in the world to be dominant. That would happen if this again a deal is signed. So it would work better for both the parties. But what is required is that both the parties put forward their opinions, put forward their concerns, challenges amicably amongst each other. And all the stakeholders in this particular discussion should take a part. And these negotiations, which are right now informal, should turn into formal stages, formal dialogues, and again, a Iran nuclear deal needs to be finalized by P5 nations, US and Iran. See, we all know that the current US president, Donald Trump's nature is usually unpredictable. But Iran is not a weak country. Iran's axis of resistance is still very powerful in considerable proxy wars in the Middle East region, which is why what we need to analyze here is that how Donald Trump would be able to navigate through his negotiation tactics, which are usually extreme, which we are currently seeing in the trade tariffs as well. The tariff war which is there in the country against China. So China and US are currently in a trade war, and how reciprocal tariffs were imposed by Donald Trump against the whole trading nations of the country. The negotiation tactic of Donald Trump would be one which experts would be focusing upon. And also how Iran is able to navigate and convince US that they won't dismantle the whole nuclear program, but they would in a way limit it. How this pans out and how this new deal would emerge, it is for us to see, and we'll see how this emergence would impact the concerns of developing nations and nations like India as well. So conclusively, we can say that US-Iran deal, it is possible, but far from guaranteed. And both the parties need to be sane, need to be sitting together amicably in order to ensure that the deal is reached. Now, what are your views surrounding this Iran's nuclear mission and how the geopolitics around Iran's nuclear weaponization has been there in the world? What are your opinions in relation to this part? Do let me know in the comment section. I'll be very happy to read them. All the very best. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.